Hey folks, Dust here, and I decided to do a little bit of a preview for the ESL ESEA LAN, which is taking place the day after I released this video. Of course, I've been known to put out vlogs, mostly related to North American CS topics, and I think North America is a big part of this tournament. I mean, 4 teams from the North American side of the league are going to be at the event, so it's half the tournament, basically, as far as the teams go, and of course, 3 of which are actually from North America. So with the pretty high percentage of North American teams involved, thought I would do a bit of a preview here and talk about the groups, talk about the teams that have been at the tournament, and kind of maybe what to expect, what we've seen so far, things like that, basically. So I'll start off with kind of talking about the format, I guess. 2 groups of 4 teams. Apparently 3 teams advance from each group, and the top team of each group gets to skip the initial bracket stage, and that's pretty much how it plays out from what I can gather. So let's take a look at Group A first. I didn't really pick a particular order to go when I talked about teams, but I'll start off with Cloud9. First off, I'll just say that I did a very long video talking about the current 5 of Cloud9 and kind of their progress since making the roster changes and since they've kind of started to establish themselves and get some time together, talking about how they solidified their roles, who really plays what role, who the impact players are, how they've changed mats around, things like that. So if you want an in-depth discussion of the current 5 of Cloud9, you can definitely check out that video. I'll link it below. It's just called, I think I called it the new Cloud9 or Cloud9's progress or Cloud9's progression, something like that. Very recent stuff, so you can definitely check that out. So in this group, they are going to be playing against EnVyUs, Virtus Pro, and Luminosity Gaming. Kind of funny because they just played against Envy and Virtus Pro in a group over at the Gfinity Summer Masters 1, so I think that is a very good source to look at for information to kind of understand how this group may go for Cloud9. So at that event, they played EnVyUs first. They opened up the series with a win on Train. They won in overtime. They had a pretty good T side. I think they won 6 or so rounds on T side. Went over to CT side. Definitely struggled for a bit there, but they were able to bring it back towards the end. Some heroics from Shroud and mostly Skadoodle, able to kind of get that back into overtime. Then eventually they were able to win out the overtime 19-15, or excuse me, 19-16, sorry. So they get that map victory. Good start for them. They went into Inferno, where they proceeded to get crushed on there 16-2. Just couldn't get anything going on T side. Weren't even really able to demonstrate whether or not their CT side Inferno would look good on LAN. Obviously, it's looked really good online. They've really turned it around. I talked about it a lot in that video I mentioned earlier that you can go check out. But we didn't even get a chance to see it. They just got crushed. Couldn't get anything going on T side, man. Just that lockdown into CT side got to them, and they obviously just didn't play the T side properly. And then they went on to Mat 3, which was Cash, which once again they started out on the CT side. I think they had like a really slow start. I think they were down 6-2 or something like that. Were able to bring it back, I think 7-8. And then they went to the second half on T side, and they definitely had their moments on T side as well, but just wasn't consistent enough. Definitely struggled, especially battling NBK in that A-bomb site. They're not able to execute there properly. And then they lose that series 2-1, or 1-2 rather. Then they went on to play VP, which is, I guess, another team in this Group A here at this LAN that they'll play against. They had a pretty competitive game on Overpass. But then they just got crushed on Dust 2, which is a map that VP don't even typically play a lot. In fact, they banned it a lot, though we did see VP win that map twice at this event. And that's actually 2 of the only 3 times they've played D2 on LAN all year, so kind of a little interesting tidbit. So that pretty much summarizes the results from the last event. Cloud9 were at against the exact same teams they're going to face again at this event, or 2 of the 3 teams are going to face at this event, right? Some takeaways from the event, on top of the preview I've already done about Cloud9 and that Cloud9 progression video. What we saw at this event was the trio looked good, and that was the trio of Nothing, Skadoodle, and Shroud. Shroud, very good CT side. When he's playing those anchor roles, he can hold it phenomenally. When I looked at, for example, holding inner on Train against EnVyUs and then being that kind of rotator to outer when outer takes came in, he was really good on that CT side to help the comeback effort happen. You look over at Cash. That's actually a map where he plays more of like a rotator role because Ska kind of anchors that A-bomb site, or Freak kind of plays that highway position. And Shroud really is active mid, playing Vince B, playing highway with Freak as well. I mean, he's kind of all over the place, and he just demonstrated, a good series here, especially on the CT side, though he didn't even get to play it on Inferno. As I mentioned in kind of that C9's progression video, and I'll mention again now, Shroud a lot more active in the entering role now for this team, kind of the second guy in the site. You know, we saw that a lot on Train T side, especially very early on, those early gun rounds. You saw this on Cash a little bit as well in the EnVyUs series. Just, you know, looked great. Shroud really had a good series here against EnVyUs, though. Against VP, Overpass he played well. Dust 2, he's completely absent, it seemed like. So maybe a little bit of an issue not getting him to play. I wouldn't say inconsistently. I think he played, what, you know, 4 good maps or 3 good maps out of 5, so it's not like terribly inconsistent, but you get my point. He did kind of fall off a little bit on some other games. Skadoodle, you know, looked to be expected. He played like a star for sure in a lot of the games on EnVyUs, especially that train game that they won, though he was a bit more quiet in some of the other maps. Nothing's form, who I also mentioned in that progression video that you can check out. His forms look pretty good over the past couple of months, and I just think in general, an overall take that you can get from that event and going into this event is that trio of Nothing, Skadoodle, and Shroud definitely seems to be overall pretty good. There was definitely some instances where some of them were kind of falling off in play at the last event, but overall I thought that trio can be quite good. Like I think Scott can be a huge impact with the ops, especially on CT sides. I think he really does improve this team. Shroud, like I said, the fact that he's being implemented better, and especially on the T sides, looks great. And then, like I said, Nothing, not at all the other roles are solidified. He's able to kind of be that X factor, sometimes lurking, sometimes being a part of executes. And I think that's good for him because he likes to kind of jump around, you know, as far as what he's going to do, whether he's going to be super aggressive or passive or lurk by himself or be, you know, the first guy in. You know, he is kind of that X factor, and they can kind of move him around freely since all the other roles are so well defined, as I said. Obviously, another takeaway from this event is Freakazoid definitely had a very poor series against EnVyUs. I think he was like -40, if I remember the stat lines, or somewhere in the -40s as far as KD ratio goes. I would say that he at least helps define the roles well. Like, he is definitely the entry fragger. He definitely will be kind of that first guy in, taking the initial engagements. In online play, his stats have even been kind of off at times, so it doesn't surprise me that his stats are off at this event. I think the big difference is like in NA League matches, Shroud, Nothing, Skadoodle can pick up the slack because you have 3 very skilled fraggers on the team, so even if Freakazoid isn't hitting his shots, those 3 can really clean up, especially, you know, with Shroud being that second guy in. Even if Freak goes down, at least he's gotten the information. Maybe he's caused someone to be peeking him, so when Shroud comes out, he can catch a guy off guard who's worried about Freakazoid, and then he can just kind of, you know, trade it out. And then he has, you know, people like Skadoodle following him up with the op or Rifle, or maybe Nothing following up, or, you know, whatever. So they can make up for it. Like, they can pick up the slack. They can relieve that extra pressure if Freak goes down. Whereas against elite level teams, especially EnVyUs, who have 4 really skilled players, to be missing out on one of your guys fragging well definitely just is a lot more evident. It has a lot more of an impact negatively on your team. And I mean, he was just losing a lot of 1v1 gun battles when it came to entering. You know, he's used to, like, for example, on Inferno, when he played against EnVyUs, I even see this in NA games all the time, where he doesn't mind just naked peeking into B and taking those engagements from the T side of Inferno, but he was losing those engagements in this particular series against EnVyUs, and there was a lot of instances where you're just kind of losing 1v1 engagements on T side, because Freakazoid is a guy who will take those all day long. He's very confident, very aggressive, and like I said, it works out for him a lot in the NA scene, but in this particular setting, it didn't. I mean, he was getting caught out a lot. Well, maybe not necessarily a mistake, but maybe just needing to make an adjustment. Hey, I'm not winning these 1v1 engagements, you know, out in the open. You know, I'm not hitting my shot. They're beating me. You know, we got to figure out a new way to approach the attack or something. So that's just more of an adjustment thing rather than a bold mistake. I would say on CT sides, just a lot of times he seemed like he was in weird, awkward positions. Sometimes he gets caught out in the forklift on Cash, for example. He always plays that spot, and people can catch him out on it sometimes. On Train, he was kind of playing this weird angle peeking ladder from aggressive T-connector, which is okay if, like, Nothing's backing him up, which a lot of the times he is, but there's many times where he's just kind of out there on an island by himself just trying to take a 1v1 engagement against a player coming ladder, where it seemed like he had an angle disadvantage. And it was just kind of a weird peak. I mean, I guess he just felt confident with it, but he lost a lot of battles at that angle. And so I just think that he just overall wasn't fragging really well. He needs to be fragging a little bit better. I'm not expecting him to blow up and drop 20 and 30 bombs. He doesn't even need to do that. You know, if Shroud, Nothing, Ska, that trio, if they're playing well, they're fragging well, Freak just needs to do his job, which he does do. He just needs to frag a little bit better, relieve a little bit of pressure off those guys when it comes to the initial takes on sites, and being able to, hold his ground on CT side, basically. I will just say that Cloud9 looked overall better than obviously the Gfinity Spring Masters 2 event, where they didn't get any maps against European teams, and their play just didn't look nearly as good. Like I said, the roles feel way more well-defined. Their tactics look better. They just overall looked better. I mean, I'll be honest, it seems like they're making progress. They're heading in the right direction. They just need to go a little bit further, get a little bit more production out of Freakazoid, and then, just get maybe a little bit more consistency out of some of the stars on the team, and then I think you're golden. I don't think they made any really super bad mistakes. The only thing I would say is, like, against EnVyUs on Cash, for example, some of their A takes were a bit hesitant. They seemed a bit frozen up whenever they didn't get that entry frag on MBK right away. I think Adren actually did a really good job, by the way, kind of breaking some of this stuff down on his YouTube channel, where he kind of reviewed the demo of that match. And me and Adren actually talked about it privately, like in his mumble. I actually kind of told him about the game, that he should maybe take a look at it and record it. And break it down, so I thought it'd be a good game to break down, and he actually did, and he did a great job with it. And you can just kind of see some of those mistakes on that video. Some of it was just unlucky timings, and just, like I said, just losing gun battles at times, like people hitting 6 shots on EnVyUs. So there wasn't a lot of crazy mistakes from Cloud9, but there were a few. And obviously, one of the other big things was like losing some eco rounds and getting a bad economy, which sets you up for failure for a lot of the rest of the half. So yeah, those are some big things. Stepping away from that, all they have to do is just get past Luminosity then. Even if they lose to Envy and VP, which I think they can take maps off those teams, but I don't see them winning a best-of-3 series right now yet. Like, they would actually have to win one first before I'd be like, okay, they have the ability to repeat that again, probably. But at least they played some close maps against VP. Like, that Overpass game was quite close. They beat EnVyUs on a map, and they played them quite close on Cash. So, yeah, I can definitely see them winning maps this event against top teams, but maybe not a whole series just yet. We'll have to see if they've made enough adjustments in the last week to patch up some things. But head-to-head against LG, I mean, that should be a breeze for them, I think. They've been really good head-to-head against LG in all their online play. They tied them in CEVO. They beat them on Cash, but lost on Inferno. But that was back when their CT side Inferno was still kind of trash. But like I said, they've really turned that around now, so I don't see them, fumbling to LG again. In fact, they've beaten that same team on Inferno twice since then, both times in Face It. They also have wins over them on ESEA, on Cash, and Mirage. And Mirage is actually like C9's weakest map. They're still able to get LG on that. So 5 out of 6 maps played head-to-head between all the online leagues. C9's been able to beat LG. So, yeah, I mean, I definitely can see Cloud9 will just advance in their group probably in 3rd place. Let's say they can get some kind of upset victory against one of these two teams between Envy and VP. I don't quite see it yet. Maybe against EnVyUs, if EnVyUs plays about the same as they did and Cloud9 fixes some mistakes, because I said that Cash game was close. But, yeah, I just see them advancing 3rd probably. Now, when you look at Virtus Pro in this group, I mean, the Gfinity Summer Masters event was definitely a disappointment for them, I'm sure. They lost to Mouse basically twice at that event, though they did have the win, obviously, against Cloud9 2-0. It was kind of surprising because they lost Mirage, Train, and Cash, and Cobbles. That's the 4 mats they lost to Mousespaz throughout the event. To be honest, losing Cobble wasn't like a huge surprise, and in fact they did so in overtime, which makes it even less surprising. I mean, when I think about VP and I think about like the maps they're really good on, the maps that come to mind are Cash, which they're very good on. Mirage, typically they can be good on, though they've kind of struggled a bit this year. Inferno, they can be definitely a formidable opponent on Inferno. They've looked good on Train. So those are kind of the maps that I think about. I guess Cash being the biggest one, but some of these other maps they look good on. And Cobble going into the event, they were 2 for 6. I know that they've had it banned against them a lot, so they don't get to play it as much as the other maps. And I definitely know they have some strong T-sides from watching them play against teams like TSM and some of these other teams. So I know they have the T-side to back them, but just the times we have seen them play it, they have suffered some losses, even losing the Cloud9 on the map at another previous Gfinity event back when they still had Shazam and Simphis and they were a much weaker team than they are today. They had a loss to Cloud9 on the map. So I know they're capable of losing Cobble. I know it's not one of like their most well-known maps. So that didn't surprise me a whole lot, but like I said, Mirage, so far this year, they've played it 15 times, and they have only won it 6 times. So, and there used to be like a super solid Mirage team, and I think they still are, but they definitely had a few fumbles, and this is one of them, I think, losing to Mouse Sports, who we didn't really know anything about coming into this event. This is their first LAN with that 5, since they did kind of the whole Penta Mouse Sports merger. So we didn't really know what to expect, but they looked pretty good this event. I think Mouse Sports were impressive. We hope to see him at more events. So I don't know if it was more of VP playing really bad or just Mouse being better than expected. Probably a combination of both. I wouldn't even really say bad. It's not playing quite as good because their losses were quite close, like the overtime loss in groups to Mouse and Cobble, for example. I think it was surprising seeing them lose Cash, though, which is a map they're very, very good on, and they kind of got blasted. Well, actually, it's not kind of. They got blasted by Mouse in the groups on Cash. It wasn't even a close game at all, to be honest. So that was definitely a little bit tough to see. But if you step back away from this event, you look at some of the other events that they have played kind of coming into this prior to, obviously, that kind of disappointing result that I just mentioned. And they're still, placing in the top 4. They're still playing pretty solid Counter-Strike, you know what I mean? So I don't necessarily know how much it really... I don't. Sorry about that. The webcam just totally blurped on me right there. Wow. It's doing it again. What is this? Hopefully it'll stop doing that, folks. Sorry about that. But trying to get back to what I was talking about here with Virtus Pro, they were able to do some other good things. Like I said, placing top 4 in some other events. They even took... second place at the last Gfinity event, losing to Fnatic in the finals, but being able to get past Envy, being able to get past Navi in the group play and playing well there. They were 3rd, 4th at the Faceit Stage 1 finals, losing to NIP, but having wins against, TSM and Elevate. And then they had that first place at ESEA LAN, even being able to beat Fnatic. And Titan and such. Though I think the maps, like that season game against Fnatic, for example, on ESEA LAN was kind of helped them out quite a lot there with the map pool. So, yeah, I think they're still a formidable opponent. I don't think one bad performance, losing to some upset games to Mouse, is enough to say that VP can't contend. And I think they'll have no problem being C9 and LG, I think is my point. Maybe Cloud9 upsets them, but I can't see LG doing it. So when I think about Virtus Pro at this point, it really comes down to the head-to-head against EnVyUs. Who's going to take the first seed out of the group between VP and EnVyUs, right? And head-to-head, I think they've only played against each other a single time on LAN in 2015, and that was at the Gfinity Spring Masters 2 event, that event that I just told you where VP took second after losing to Fnatic in the finals. And they 2-0'd Envy here. They beat them 16-10 on Train and 16-4 on Cash. Having that big CT side on Cash that game, just 12 rounds in the first half on CT side, just kind of, overran Envy at that point. But I think EnVyUs has looked better as a team than what we saw last time they played VP head-to-head, especially this summer event where they were able to win the event, get the first place finish. So, yeah, with that said, I think it all comes down to the head-to-head between these two teams. Maybe VP is slightly favored since they beat them before. This webcam, dude, is trolling me so badly. Hold on, folks. Alright, hopefully I won't have to deal with that again. Now, going on to EnVyUs, so that's the other person that's favored to maybe take first place in this group over Virtus Pro. Obviously, they looked great at the summer event. They were able to get to victory there, playing against NIP in the finals and getting just the big win there. And so that was definitely good for EnVyUs, obviously, to get that championship there, get that title. When you look at some of their other events prior to that throughout the year, they've looked quite good. Let's be honest here. Prior to winning first place at the summer event, they had second place at Star Series, though. I guess that wasn't that stacked of a tournament. Their main competition was Navi, and they actually lost to him in the finals 1-3. And even had some struggles against kind of that dark, not really dark horse, but that Team G play that we didn't know how good they would be. I'm sure we thought EnVyUs would be able to handle that no problem, but they actually struggled against that team a little bit, even dropping a map to them. At the last Gfinity Spring Masters 2 event, they actually, 2-0'd everyone except for VP, where they lost in that head-to-head, and that was their biggest shortcoming of that event. And then prior to that, obviously, they had the second place at DreamHack Tours, losing Fnatic in the finals, but beating Dignitas, who's coming up and being a pretty good team right behind TSM in the Danish scene. Then, of course, at the PGL event, the CCS kickoff finals, they got beat by Fnatic and NIP at that event. But we also saw them, just playing generally pretty good. That top four type team, I think they're currently probably number 3 in the world right now behind, Fnatic and TSM. So definitely an opponent that is formidable and can be definitely really good stuff. And with that said, I mean, this is just a team that has a lot of pure skill. With Happy being the in-game leader again, taking it back away from Shox, and there was a swap there, but now it's back to Happy, and he can frag still really well with an in-game leading kind of lurking position. They have Kiyoshima, who, explosive, aggressive rifler, can be quite good. You got Shox, whose form looked really, really good this past event. Some vintage era Shox back when he was like the best player in the world type stuff, or close to it at least. And then obviously NBK, who's been playing quite well. And it's just, being able to put Happy and MBK in these solo positions. I know Happy's kind of considered to lurk on the team, but you see MBK off a lot, especially on maps where you kind of have 2 solo positions. So Dust 2, for example, Happy kind of the solo long player, MBK kind of playing the B tunnels by himself, while the rest travel in a pack. And packing Shox and Kiyoshima together to be able to do entries and stuff like that, that's just such a good combination to have. This team has such a good win rate on most of the maps in the pool, especially Cash, the 25 games played and 20 wins on land this year, 80% win rate, so good there. They have great play on Inferno as well. Very, very good on Dust 2, obviously. A lot of games play on that. 23 games play with a 70% win rate there. So their map pool is quite good. They're quite well-rounded. The only maps that they really avoid, I guess, are Mirage. And then Train, we've only seen them play it twice, and they've lost both. But obviously they showed some potential against Cloud9 at the last event on that map. And they had some limited play on Overpass and Kabla as well. And they've looked good in some of those few games as well. So they have a really good map pool. They have a lot of talent. I definitely think that it's all going to come down, like I said, that head-to-head matchup against Virtus Pro in this group to see who takes first and who takes second. Obviously, VP has a slight head-to-head edge, but we've seen EnVyUs playing better this last event in comparison to some of their events prior to that. I think it'll be really cool to see these two teams go head-to-head on Cash. Last time, it was a blowout in VP's favor because they had a huge CT side against Envy, but we know that, EnVyUs has such a great win rate on the map and play Cash so well, and I think it's going to be really cool to see them two probably play Cash in the group play of this event, since they both will be willing to play it. And maybe even like an Inferno game between them happening. I could see that happening as well. Maybe a Cobbler Overpass. I don't know. Either way, this should be a cool series to see those two teams play, and they'll fight for first, obviously. When it comes to Luminosity, they've played well in the NA scene. They went 16-6 in ESEA. They have even scored wins against Liquid twice in that ESEA league. In the SIVO League, they didn't get any losses. They had 6 wins and 6 ties. That includes tying all the higher-ranking teams like Cloud9, like, some of the other top teams in the league. They even had the win over CLG, which will also be at this event. So definitely, a pretty solid team. And throughout all this, NAF, Anger, and Pitt have definitely been the 3 guys to look at. They are really such similar players. They're all can be very aggressive riflers. I guess Pitt can also drop back into more passive support positions, but Anger and Nat definitely those very aggressive riflers, and Pitt's right there with them. And that's just kind of the thing. They just travel in a pack of 3. They just go into sites and trade. And it's just those 3, high damage, aggressive riflers packing together and just looking to take sites together. And that's kind of one of their biggest bonuses, I guess you could say. It's just how those 3 pack together to enter sites. Obviously, Peter being the in-game leader, being the opera, we've seen big games for him before out of the op at LAN. Obviously the biggest one was against LDLC at Aspen. It's been a long time since then, 7 months ago to be exact, or maybe less than 7 months, like 6.5 months or whatever. We know he's capable with the op, but it definitely comes down to Anger, Naf, and Pitt. Those are the 3 guys we need to see perform and see how they perform. Pitt, those 3 have looked so good online together. This will be Pitt's first LAN since playing with Orbit a while ago. His first LAN with this team. Let's see how he does, because he can be so instrumental on CT side, being one of those main rotators, setting people up, also, taking engagements and winning them. On T side, he can be one of those guys entering sites with Anger and Naf and helping take sites, or being more of a support role, dropping bet, letting Naf and Anger come to the forefront. So he's a big factor on this team. I think he's like one of the most important players on the team for them to perform well at this event. You look at Anger, his stats have been great once again, like they always are in all the online league play. But the last 3 or 4 lands I've seen him play at, he's struggled. This goes back to that ESEA land when he was playing with what is now Liquid, but formerly Denial. Though I guess not many of the team members are left from the Denial days, so I guess it's not even fair to call them what is now Liquid anymore. He played really poorly at that event, though the rest played well, and they had some upset wins there. Since he's been on LG, he played another ESEA LAN as well as the CEVO Season 6 LAN in both those events. He had a couple of maps that were quite good, but he had also some other, maybe like one good map out of 4, one really good map out of 4 maps, and then maybe like one average map, but 2 pretty bad maps, And I just think he's got to bring it this LAN. He's got a much better team around him. With this LG roster than the previous LG roster using it the last 2 lands he played at. So that can't be an excuse anymore, I guess you could say. So we just need to see him produce. And I mean, I know he can. Back when he played with Complexity at that, I think it was the season 16 ESEA LAN with Complexity when they, were beating teams like Nip and Navi and Virtus Pro. He was playing quite well at that LAN. When he was playing with iBuyPower, and they beat Titan, those back-to-back best-of-3s at the ESEA Season 15 LAN. He played well at that event as well. So I know he's capable of playing well on LAN and CSGO, but the last few events he hasn't. He needs to step it up. NAF, let's see how he plays. I've seen him play LANs with Liquid and be good one map, horrible the next, very inconsistent play, but he definitely, is a younger guy. He has a lot of time to develop. He can be that aggressive rifler. He can pick up the op sometimes as like a secondary opper if you need be. So yeah, I mean, I think this team is pretty solid in the NA scene, and against other NA teams, I think they do well, but they don't have the best head-to-head track record against Cloud9, and it's hard to see them being able to topple VP and EnVyUs. In fact, I can't see it at all. So unfortunately, I think they have to take 4th in this group, but I don't think they're necessarily a terrible team. I just think that their only out is to try to beat Cloud9 and take 3rd place, and I guess the head-to-head record doesn't really favor them much in that regard. So we look at Group B. I mean, this is the group with Fnatic and TSM, and that's the team. We want to see how that's going to go, right? Fnatic, no real need to introduce this team. I mean, they have been playing, pretty well. They had that DreamHack Summer Open win just last month in June. They had the Fragbite Season 4 finals where they took 2nd place back in June as well. Then, of course, the 1st place at DreamHack Tours. They've been regarded the top team for a very long time. The only thing that seems to stand in their way these days is TSM, losing to them in a best-of-5 at that Fragbite Masters Season 4 finals and that 1-3 series, though they did have a 2-1 win over TSM earlier in the tournament. But then you look, obviously, at that PGL event. They lost to TSM in that event as well. They were eliminated from TSM at Face It Stage 1 finals to take 3rd, 4th place at that event. So the head-to-head against TSM has been Fnatic's biggest struggle. They seem not to really, have too much trouble over anyone else, being able to 3-0 VP in the finals of the Gfinity Spring Masters 2 event in May, getting past teams like EnVy and Hellraisers at Tours. It just doesn't seem like they're really struggling too much, except for against TSM. I mean, they have insane win rates. They have over a 60% win rate on pretty much every map in the pool. In many cases, it's in the 70s or maybe even higher. The only exceptions to this are maps like Train, which I've never seen them play on LAN this year yet. And then Overpass, which they play quite rarely. But, I mean, on Mirage, on Cash, on Inferno, on Cobblestone. I mean, I could go on forever. This team just delivers. They have such talent. I mean, people still consider Olaf Meister to be the best player in the world right now. Krims used to be the best player in the world, still is quite damn good, plays his role really, really well. And then you have JW, that wild card that can go around and just be one of the best oppers in the world, if not the best. Getting your picks, and he doesn't even have to be the star of the team because he has Olaf and Krims handling that. And then Flush is no slouch himself, plays quite well. I know he had kind of a rough period at the very beginning of the year, had a lot of controversy surrounding him, but he's played quite well over the last few months. They just have so much skill. They just lock down CT sides. And on T sides, they just are able to exercise map control so well. You think of Mirage, where Krims can just play that underpass all off back mid, and they're just able to exercise mid control with those 2 players alone. leave Olaf Meister in solo positions. Like after they take mid control, they leave him ladder. He's able to just manipulate their rotations, cut people off while they execute A or B. You see him going out by himself on cobblestone at long B and just getting out there and getting kills and causing a ruckus, while Krems is right there to back him up. Like in many cases, it is kind of Flusha lurking, Olaf doing solo work, and then it's just JW, Pronax, and Krems as a pack, and just being able, like between JW and Krems to trade. Even sometimes it's like JW off by himself, and then it's Olaf, Krems, and Pronax. They're traveling in a pack, and they're so damn good. I mean, it's really hard. You can look at almost any map you want to, like I said, in the pool, and you look at their tactics, and even if they're not like crazy elaborate tactics, just the way they exercise map control, the way they work picks, the skill that they have, they're favored to take at least second place in this group for sure, and probably one of the favorites to make the finals. Are definitely should expect no less than second place, I guess, at this event. Then we look at TSM. Obviously, they've won the last 3 lands they've played at. So first at Fragbite Masters, first at Faces Stage 1, first at PGL. Even at the EPL winner, they were placing top 4 there. So, they haven't really had troubles placing top 4 in actually quite some time since they got this 5 together. They look absolutely sick. They have near 80% win rates on maps like Inferno, Cash, and Mirage. Limited play on Cobble and Overpass, but it still looked good when they've played those maps. I've yet to really see them play Train, so I can't comment too much on that. So they also have a very expansive map pool. They've been able to beat Fnatic the last tournaments they played at them, either beating them in the finals in 2 of those tournaments, also eliminating them at Face It on their way to go win a title at that tournament. So it really just comes down to the head-to-head between Fnatic and TSM, obviously to determine who's going to take first place in this group. TSM seem to have the edge. They seem to be the counter to Fnatic. And I think it's because they can just total up almost the same skill that Fnatic has, at least to a degree. Device, Dupree, Zipnix, even Kerrigan jumping in and fragging well, Cajun B obviously playing well on this team. They have almost just as much skill as Fnatic does, and on some given maps, they play even better than some of these guys on Fnatic. And I think that's the biggest thing. TSM have just as good of a map pool and have almost just as much skill as Fnatic. I think it's one of the reasons why they can counter Fnatic so well. Like, against all these other teams, Fnatic seem to have just a huge skill advantage. They seem to just be able to play more maps better than many other teams, or maybe limited to kind of 3 really good maps. Maybe only 1 for sure home map, and then maybe 2 other really, really good maps, whereas Fnatic, they can play the whole pool for the most part. But I think TSM matches up to them pretty well because they can also play the pool quite well. And they have, like I said, just a lot of skill themselves. And they've had a great track record so far these last 3 tournaments, placing first. It's going to come down to those 2 teams. Who's going to take first in the group? That's the storyline of this tournament. Can Fnatic overcome TSM and win the title and take first place in the group to start with? And even if they can't, can they beat them later on in the playoffs to get to the title? Can they finally overcome TSM head-to-head? We've seen them beat TSM in a series, like I said earlier, whenever they beat them at the Fragbite Masters event, like early in the tournament, but then TSM got them right back in that best-of-5 with a 3-1 victory. So we know Fnatic's capable of beating TSM, but can they do it here at this tournament? I think these are the 2 teams to watch out for the most, obviously, and they really don't need any introduction. So the other last 2 teams in Group B, who's fighting for 3rd place, is Keed Stars and CLG. Keed Stars have looked phenomenal. Like in the regular season, they went 17-5 to take 2nd place. They just won that iBuyPower Invitational tournament, beating Liquid in the finals and topping the other NA teams. So they definitely proved themselves to be pretty dominant in the NA scene. They've traded some maps with Cloud9, so I guess Cloud9 kind of edges them out for first in NA right now, or at least obviously in the lead. That's the way the standings went. And I know they're not really a North American team, so they're not really in the mix for who's the best in NA, but they're quite a good team. Most people thought of them like kind of a one-trick pony with Mirage back earlier in the year, but they've began to slowly increase their map pool. Quite good on Overpass, quite good on Dust 2. Some of these other maps they can definitely start to put some work in. Fur, this kid is absolutely nuts. Just his stats are insane in all the online league play. He's played well on LAN, like a Katowice, for example, where they got out of groups, they got into the top 8. They kind of just made history there by being like this Brazilian team who made it top 8 in a major. And Fur, just absolutely phenomenal player. Bolts plays well also. They can bring out that double op with ZQK and Fallen. And they're, like I said, just playing really well in the NA scene right now as they slowly advance their map pool and get it better as a team. So I think they're my favorite to take 3rd place over CLG for sure. I did write an article about Keyed Stars, which I'll include in this video. I wrote a lot of content about a lot of these teams. So if you want some in-depth knowledge about all these teams, by the way, I'll link some stuff in the description of like articles I've written or vlogs I've done on these teams already. CLG is another example where I just did a huge vlog about CLG, so I don't want to spend too much time talking about them in this video, in the preview. All I'll really say is I can, maybe if they can get past Keyed Stars, they'll take third in this group, but I definitely can't see them touching TSM or Fnatic. They have to beat Keyed Stars. It's definitely possible, but it's hard to peg this team down because they're just so damn inconsistent. They'll look so great one game, look like they have everything together, then the next game they'll just flop, and so it's very hard to understand where they sit. I know they're in a team house now. I know they had Steele with them at that house coaching them. Like it's like evident now. We've seen it all over the place. We've seen it on stream. We know he's at that house. You can see him in the background on his webcam. It's been published everywhere at this point. So Steele's very gifted tactically, a very smart guy. Can he get this team together tactically? Can he help them find consistency? Can he help get more out of the roster? That is some of the questions we'll see for CLG. Like I said, I don't want to harp too much on them because I just did a huge video about them just a week or two ago, and nothing has really changed since I made that video about CLG. So I'll just kind of leave it at that. But that's the two teams fighting for third. I would give Keyed an edge over CLG. So that's how I think it's going to go. If I had to just give full group predictions, I think I'll take... It's hard to pick between EnVyUs and VP for first in Group A, just because VP does have the head-to-head record. It's only one best of 3 that they've played on land against each other all year. And yeah, VP 2-0'd that series, but I think EnVyUs is a little bit better than that. Hard. I mean, I think it comes down to match. I think Cash will be very interesting. Both teams very known for their Cash. They're probably the 2 best Cash teams in the world. Maybe you could include Fnatic in that mix, obviously. But, I mean, VP and EnVy, that's their map, man. Both of them. So I think it'd be cool to see them play on Cash. Who takes it? I don't know, man. If EnVyUs plays as well as they played this last tournament with this form that Shox had, I think I will take EnVy to take first, VP second, Cloud9 third, LG fourth in that group. But I would not be the least bit surprised if VP can knock out EnVy head-to-head and take first in the group. When I look at Group B, I'm gonna go with Fnatic to take first in the group, but that doesn't mean that TSM couldn't beat them later in the playoffs, kind of like how the Fragment Masters event went. And I'll take, you know what? No, I'm gonna take TSM first in the group, Fnatic second in the group. I'll take Keyed third, CLG fourth. So that's how I'm gonna do it. TSM has beat Fnatic head-to-head more times than Fnatic's been able to topple them head-to-head over the last couple of months. So I think you just got to take TSM here until Fnatic can prove they can overcome them. So I'll take TSM to top that group, yeah. So that's pretty much it. Like I said, I have so much more information about a lot of these NA teams, especially like CLG, like Cloud9, even like Keyed Stars. I'll link those articles and vlogs so that you can get some more information about those teams in depth if you want it. This video is already kind of drug on long, so I don't want to go too crazy over with all the teams. I've had my webcam mess up on me a bunch of times, so that kind of delayed things and made this go a little bit rougher than I wanted it to go. But either way, I hope this provides somewhat of a preview, gives some predictions, talks about these teams and where they're at. I'll probably do another video after the event is over to kind of summarize that, and then I'll move on to some more NA news videos coming up soon, such as things with Tempo Storm and Elevate going on. So yeah, thanks for tuning in. Hope to see you next time.